Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Adobe Live. My name is James Bonanno, and I am here for day 4 of our Adobe Premiere Pro Creative Challenge, weekly videos over here on Adobe Creative Cloud YouTube channel and Behance. Thank you for joining me on day 4. Hopefully it's not 100 degrees where you're joining, and if not, you are cozy at your desk, ready to learn some Premiere magic. Today is actually, as mundane as it may sound, it's one of my most exciting parts of Premiere Pro, and that is the organization and getting things set up in your project prior to actually getting started. So today is going to be a lot of the fundamentals of how I organize my projects, how I get my workflow started. I have a couple project files up here that we're going to actually reference. For those that are following along, in that description, in the YouTube description below, you should have some starter files. Today is a little bit light because the project files are pretty massive. So all you'll really need is that Premiere Pro access, and you can open it up and we can kind of start from scratch today. With that being said, welcome everyone to the chat. Wade, Kevin, Laura, welcome back. It's great to have everyone here for the week. And without further ado, I sort of just want to hop in here. Again, if you're new to this sort of format, if you are joining on Behance, leave me some questions as we go over, for the next 25 minutes, what we're going to discuss in Premiere. If you have any suggestions, feedback, anything you want to learn about Premiere Pro and organization in general, leave that in the comments or leave it in the Behance chat as we're on here. So with that being said, let's get into Premiere, my favorite app in the Creative Cloud suite. I'm not biased, but I am. So I just have an Iceland project up here just to get things started. Do not be alarmed. You will not have this in your reference footage, but basically I just want to show, just for a visual representation, what a full project for me or a timeline may look like, because it can seem a little bit daunting. And that is why I want to sort of reverse engineer everything and really start with the basics of how I organize my project before it gets to this point. So as you can see, we're not going to actually play through any of the video here, but if I scroll through my timeline, if I'm adding plus and minus on my keyboard here, tomorrow, we're going to be going over my favorite shortcuts, so definitely stick around for that. We're going to be addressing a lot of these things I'm talking about today. But you can see there is a lot of colors. There's a lot of adjustment layers. There are a lot of tracks, just a lot of things going on, right? Which is great. We want to be able to get to the point as video editors where we can stack things on top of each other. We can really amplify the piece by adding sound design, by adding color, by adding different clips, transitions, all that jazz. But we want to make sure that when we do get to this point that we have properly organized everything in our bin. So if I go over here to my project window, I have a project here and it looks very neat and tidy. And a lot of people I've worked with, editors I've hired before, don't necessarily work that way. And it makes it very difficult if you are an editor handing down a project to another editor. You want to make sure they can find things in a very reasonable time, and give you back what you gave them. So let's get into the organization aspect of today. So just for the sake of the video, I'm going to just open up a very brand new project. We're going to go to File, New, Project. Okay. And this is what the window will look like. So we're just going to name the project name. Again, very rudimentary. Sorry, guys. I'm just moving my mic here. We're going to just call this Organizing with James. That is me. That's my name. All right. And you're going to have a project location. So if you're just opening Premiere for the very first time, stick around. You're going to want to know this whole process here. All right. So choose location. And in this location, before I ever open up a project, I always on either a hard drive, a server, or on my local, hard drive on my computer, I create a folder. And I always have a pretty similar folder structure because I think the folder structures that are on your hard drive should sort of be duplicated inside of Premiere so that when you're referencing them back and forth, you're not getting confused on some inconsistencies. All right, so what I have here, this is a little bit wonky, but let's go to, let's say May. So you can see that I have different projects already saved in here, but for the sake of this, we're just going to create a new folder. We're going to call this July. So I personally, again, this is just preference. I like to sort everything by year and month so that I know if we went on a trip to Iceland in a certain month and the year, I can reference that very easily on our server and our backup hard drives, which we'll get into here in a little bit. So now I'm going to just place this project inside Actually, you know what I'm going to do first is I'm going to create a new folder. I'm going to call this project files, and we're going to save it inside that project file so that we don't have to save it as something else once we add more to that folder. All right, and we're just going to go create. Okay, and because I have all of this up, you can actually see that this is all already opened. All right, and we're just going to close everything out. And right now, we have ourselves a blank project. Okay, we're starting on a clean slate here, blank slate. Okay, so what I would do first is I would come in here and I want to organize things by footage. I want to organize things by sequences. I want to have everything categorized as the asset that I plan on putting in here. So the first thing I'm going to do, and before you actually import anything, you'll notice down here you have different views. So you have your list view, you have your icon view. Icon view is very helpful when if we reference this one over here, let's say I wanted to actually see what I have physically in the drone clips, I would go to icon view and I can actually see once they load, you'll be able to reference these clips. You can see, okay, now I know exactly what I'm looking for. You can scrub through these clips and create those in and out points a little bit easier than lists, in my opinion. But once again, total preference. It just depends on what you're into. All right, so I'm going to go Command B, and that is a shortcut for creating a bin. And a bin is essentially just a folder inside of Premiere Pro. And you can create as many folders as you'd like, subfolders inside of each. But the first one I'm going to create is just called footage. Okay. And let's say I want to, inside of that footage, I came back from Iceland. I shot on a Canon camera. I shot on a cinema camera. I might have shot on a drone. I shot on my phone. I had a GoPro. I want to make sure that I'm categorizing all of those assets in different cameras appropriately, because then it's easier for me as an editor to reference them in the process. And I may know in my head, oh, I got really great drone footage here, but maybe not as many phone shots here. So I'm going to go Command B again. Very simple. You just create another folders, and I'm going to call this Canon. Let's just label it C70. That was the camera. Again, whatever camera you're using would be what you would put in here. Let's go drone. Okay. Let's do another folder, and we'll call this iPhone, because we are in 2022 and so much of the footage that I shoot these days is shot on an iPhone or on a smartphone. And let's go GoPro. Okay, so now we have one folder with all of our footage that we can very easily keep organized in here as we continue to edit. All right, so the next thing I'm going to do is Command B again, and I'm going to create a sequences folder. And the sequences, this part is really important because this is where it can get unruly and a little bit out of hand. Once again, I have this up for reference, but if we go back into our Iceland folder here, you can see that in our sequences, when you go into cut sequences, nested sequences, B-roll sequences, there's lots of different sequences that you may create and add. And again, when you start, you just want to make sure that everything is organized. And as you're going, it's kind of like organizing your closet as you're putting clothes in it, rather than waiting to the end of the month. I think it's a good way to look at things the way that we're doing here in Premiere. So for sequences, I'm going to go Command B again, great shortcut. I'm going to go to nests here, and I'll explain what nests are in a second for those who are not aware. Command B, we're going to go to, let's just call this drafts or cuts, versions. So if you're working professionally with a company, drafts might be good because you can duplicate different drafts. So you're keeping yourself in check as well as the company you're working for, or even just for yourself. Let's go deliverables. So I like to do a deliverable sequence, which is my final version of things. So if it's a final version for Instagram, YouTube, our website, whatever distribution, that's where that sequence lives. And I'll color code it a little bit differently. Okay, and then let's go one more sequence, and we're going to call this selects. Okay, and selects is the first place I start, and we're going to actually get into hopefully a little bit of that here in a minute. Laura, you had a question. Do you duplicate all video files into the project folder and also keep it in another directory, or just in Premiere? That's a great question. As I was mentioning earlier, I have this up here, and I just wanted to show kind of a reference. We have a backup server, and this is something that we can access no matter where we are. And you can see that inside of each of these folders, as I mentioned, it's labeled by year and then by month. And inside of those months, if it is a project that I have created, it's organized roughly in the same way. Sometimes there's a little bit of differences, but I really try to keep the folder structure here first. And then I sometimes duplicate it, or I just manually go in here to Premiere and set it up the way I want? So that's a really great question, Laura. And once again, just preference, but organization just, it helps. Okay, so now we have our footage, we have our sequences. Let's create an audio folder. All right, so we go audio, Command B, and let's go and think about all the different audio tracks that we can have in our video. We can have music tracks, right? That's the most common one. So any music that I source, anything I'm pulling from here in Premiere, Epidemic, Artlist, all the places I'm pulling music go into this folder. Okay. And one thing I did not mention, this is extremely, extremely important. And Laura, that question kind of came to my mind. If you're pulling all this folder that I set up here, everything that you're pulling into Premiere has to live in this folder. If it does not live in this folder and it's somewhere on a different drive and you don't have that drive hooked up, Premiere is not going to be able to recognize where it is. It's going to show you an unlinked error. So anything that I have audio-wise, music that I've downloaded, the first thing I do is I drag it from downloads, I put it into an audio folder here, and then I bring it here into Premiere so that it has a sourced directory of where it's coming from. That is extremely important for proper organization so that things do not get lost. Okay. Just wanted to clear that up. All right. So another audio track that I might use is SFX, sound effects. Okay. That's what that is. So anything, different sound design that I want to build on. Again, like we saw here in our Iceland sequence, if we go into here, again, I labeled this purple, all of these tracks underneath my video, these are all sound effects, music, and voiceover. Okay. And that's our third. Let's close this out so we don't confuse ourselves. We close panel and we go here and let's go voiceover. Okay. So this is just the preliminary sort of phases of just getting things set up. I think it helps to slow things down and really think about what you have. You can always add to it. You can remove, these folders it's not gospel. It's just here to give you a good starting point. All right. So we have audio, footage, sequences. Next bin I'm going to make is graphics. Okay. And inside that graphics folder, these are going to be titles. All right. Animations that maybe you're creating stuff outside of Premiere in After Effects. You're creating things that you want to bring back into Premiere. That's where these are going to live. Okay. I also create another folder called adjustment layers. And these adjustment layers this is down the line. These are color layers. These can be title layers. These can be any adjustment layer that you put onto a timeline will get saved. If I right click this and I add a new adjustment layer, this gets saved inside of your project as just adjustment layer. So I would let's say I name this, color correction, and this was my color correction layer. I would just drag that to adjustment layers. So it just stays nice and tidy. And then anything stays in there. Once again, we see that I did not name these adjustment layers, but you'd be able to find them pretty easily since there's only about 5 in here. But anything that would go in here, adjustment layers, good folder to have. Okay. Sequences, graphics, footage, audio, adjustment layers. We're looking pretty good at this point. Honestly, there's a couple more that I might add. So let's say photos. So those are any photos that I took that maybe I'm importing and implementing into a video. Maybe I'm pushing into a photo. Maybe I'm using it as a background, what have you. And then inside that could be screenshots. Earlier in the week, we talked about exporting high-res thumbnail frames. Those would actually end up living inside of these folders. So let's see, I think I probably did that in here so I have my photos here, right? So anything that has been pulled into said project is a photo. Okay. And then there's another couple, elements that you might incorporate. I have these motion graphics templates. So these are different, motion graphics templates that either exist. If we go to our caption and graphics over here, you can see that there's a lot of these templates that already exist inside of Premiere Pro without any work on your end. They're just stock with what is here in Premiere. So this travel title looks pretty sweet. So let's just set up a new sequence and let's just see what this is all about. 1920 by 1080. And let's just call this motion graphics sample. Okay. And I'm just going to drag this in here. And you're going to notice that as I drag it in, let's keep the existing settings. I've now created a sequence over here in my project panel, and it's created a folder already that has that asset inside of it, the travel title, right? So we look at this, and this is that travel title. And this, we're not going to get into this today. I actually had done a creative challenge and I believe some live streams last year all about creating your own MOGRT. So if you're interested in more of this, give a little search. I believe it's on the Creative Cloud YouTube, how to create MOGRTs and then how to implement them here. I was just showing it as a reference of how it actually adds to the folder here. Wade, that is a great question. Saving this structure so it's available on future projects. I believe you can. I've actually been thinking about that a lot recently because I've been creating these over and over for some smaller projects. So if you do know in the chat, or if you're watching and you're leaving a comment on the description of the YouTube video, let us know if you can do that. I don't see why you wouldn't be able to. I'm just not sure of how. I'm sure it's super, super easy to save that format as a structure. For future projects. Okay. Great questions coming into the chat here today, guys. Thank you very much. All right. So, excuse me. So what's nice is you now have everything right here and it would come in as motion graphics templates. And so you'll see in my, let's open up my Iceland video. I actually, use some, I think these are from Maddie Hapoya. I bought a pack of his. He's a great YouTube creator and a filmmaker who has created some really great motion graphics. And I reference a lot of those on fellow creators of mine that I think would work well. And then you can customize them and they'll end up being saved over here in your window. And then you can actually edit all the controls and everything gets saved inside of your project window. So you want to make sure, again, that those are staying organized and they're not getting super, super crazy. All right. Okay. So let's back out of this for a sec. Let's go back into our edit here. And for the sake of today, as we continue to do this, I'm going to close my project here. Let's import some footage and let's actually create a timeline so you can see the next step in the process now that things are looking really organized. One other thing I wanted to mention too, any of these can be labeled and the color, you have endless. I don't want to say endless. You have a lot of different colors in here that you can label. You can keep yourself organized. I tend to just label things, as they're finished. And then these are different. You can kind of move things around, whatever works best for you, whether you want to use freeform, list, or icon view. So very, very rudimentary, basic stuff. So if I wanted to import files from, let's say, this Iceland folder, what I would do, everything is being pulled from this hard drive that I have plugged in. This is a solid state drive. And so because of that, anything I pull from other folders is going to be linked regardless. But a good habit would be all of that footage should live in this July folder. And inside of July, I might name a project, Iceland or whatever project I'm working on. And then the footage lives in that folder. So it just helps to have those duplicates. So let's just pull a couple clips and let's see. So we go in here and these are kind of all over the place, everyone, just because when I initially went to Iceland, I didn't anticipate having this drive for very long. And I've been now kind of working on it or working off of it. So let's pull like 1 or 2 clips in, just random clips. And I'm just going to drag these into my folder and I'm going to drag them right into my footage. All right. And now we see that our clips have come in, shot in 60 frames per second, 59.94. And I'm going to drag these into Canon C70 so that now I have all of that organized footage in the folder that I want it. All right. And you can do one of 2 things when you're creating this, this sequence. So let's say right now we're going to start to pull selects. All right. That's our first thing. These 3 clips are going to be our video. We have a great clip of Skogafoss. These are just random that I found. A great clip of our van, who we named Fran the Van for the week we were there. And not really sure what that clip is. Let's get a better one. That's pretty bad. Let's go back here. Command I is what I just did, if anyone was wondering. Or you can double click. Let's go to like day 7 and 8. And so for Iceland, I organize these a little bit differently. Ooh, that's cool. That is the Northern Lights. I like that. All right. And we're going to drag this into C70 again. And actually this, yeah, that was shot. No, this was actually shot on a different camera. So we'll add Canon EOS R. All right. And then that way I know exactly what I'm referencing here. And this is shot in a different frame rate, so 2997. So if I drag that into what we have here, which we haven't set up yet, let me X out of this. All right, so our selects we want to set up is referencing this frame rate right here. So I'm going to go Command N. You can do this two ways. You can either create a new sequence a little more manually, and this is where your settings will come into play. So since I shot everything in 4K, I'm going to go, rather than 1920 by 1080, I'm going to go 3840, which is double 1920 by 2180. Sorry, 2160, not 2180, James. And it'll tell you 16 by 9. And that's just double that 1920 by 1080 frame rate. And I'm going to go to my frame rate here and 5994. And we're just going to call this Iceland underscore selects. I use underscore. I'm not really sure why, but a lot of people do. And it just helps me to stay organized. Okay. And now we have our selects folder. We're going to drag in here. All right. And now if I have a selects folder, once I start clipping things out, I'd want to have maybe a rough cut version. So I'd do the same thing. And actually, rather than setting a new sequence, I'm just going to come in here. I'm going to duplicate this. Okay. Duplicate. And we're going to call this Iceland rough cut V1. All right. Every editor out there has been like V1 final, V1 final, 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 V1 final, final, final. Final goes on for a long time. V1, V2, V3, version 1, version 2. Just try to keep those things in line. I feel like your brain will thank you. That's all I can say. It's frustrating when you're like, oh my God, what version am I working on? So it helps. All right. So the first thing I like to do, we are going to run out of time here, and today's lesson really wasn't to get into the full edit, but I just want to show you how I would maybe start to pull a select and then pull it into a rough cut. So over here, I want to go to my assembly tab. And I like to start on my assembly tab because this is where I can see everything at a glance on a much, I don't know, I think it's laid out a little bit better to start cutting and do like an assembly cut, as they would say. So what I would do, we already have all this out here, but I'm going to go to my organization here. We're going to go to our footage, and I'm going to come up here. Let's actually go to our sequences. Let's go to our selects. We're going to drag that up to drafts because that's not a select. And we're going to double click this. All right. And what you're going to notice is I have this, what's called like pancake editing, where you have a timeline above and a timeline below. And the reason for that, I'm actually going to switch these two. You're going to kind of drag this and hover till you see this purple line. And then now you have this pancake window. So when you first open it, you'll see just one laid out. The reason for this, and it's really, really helped me a lot kind of in the process, I'm going to drag this in, keep existing settings. And now I have just, one select up here. Okay. And actually, did I not shoot this in 4K? Oh, I didn't shoot it in 4K. Well, silly James, that is why. So you notice that it's half the size of what we're dealing with. So that's an easy fix. I'm just going to go into that sequence. We go into our selects. We right click it. We go to sequence settings. Like that sound? That was a good one. Maybe I should record that one. 1920 by 1080. And we just hit OK. And now our sequence is set the right way. We're going to go back in here and do the same thing. I probably would export it at 4K at that point. Just so that the resolution doesn't totally compress on me here. All right, so let's say I like this first little movement here. This is kind of nice. Command K will cut this clip. And this is my selects timeline, right? So the whole idea of a selects timeline, if we reference my clip here, I have a select sequence. We have vlog selects, drone selects. You can see that whole selects timeline, this is just the best drone clips from the whole trip because it just gives you a base and a starting point to then pull from rather than having to go back here and find the exact time code. This is a little bit of an upfront consuming, time suck, but it's really, really important for knowing your footage, knowing what you have. And then all I have to do, let's say I like this clip here of, I'm going to turn this to a quarter. I just like this front clip. I go Command K and I can just drag this right down here, keep those settings. And now I can start cutting my rough cut right from the selects window that hovers directly above me. So this is always a really, really good place to start. Selects, rough cut, and then you can continue to add those rough cuts. Once you get into that rough cut and you're editing away and you're a freaking master at Premiere, come back over here and roll back into your editing window. And then you have a different layout altogether. So once again, I know that was a little bit of a fundamental shift from some of the technical stuff we talked about yesterday in the audio panel. But I really feel like it's a necessary step as even a professional editor, someone who's been doing it for 15 plus years. I still try to maintain the same organization that I've had early on, and there'll be mistakes, you'll lose media, you'll learn from them. But if you watch this video and you at least get a good base and a template of where to start, I think it will be very, very useful for you as an editor in the end. And ideally will speed up your workflow so you can just get into the goods and start creating stories, start creating magic in Adobe Premiere Pro. So that's it, everyone. Thank you for those that tuned in and asked some wonderful questions. Laura, I did have another sequence prepared, so that's what I was pulling from. I'm sorry that I can't answer all the questions. We're running here a little low on time, but again, leave them in the comments. I'll try to respond if I can. And thank you to everyone who tuned in today. Tomorrow is the last day of the creative challenge in Premiere Pro, so I'm very, very excited for day 5 on Friday and getting closer to the weekend. So thank you, everyone. Have a great rest of your day. See you soon.